Good evening to all of you, and I'm grateful to Maru for having invited me and insisted that I come here. I'm sorry that I should have come a little bit earlier. We had a book release on a very dear friend and someone that many of you have admired, Tiger Pataudi, the Nawab of cricket, and my colleague Shashi was not very well. He came directly from hospital bed to release the book, but it took a little while for him to get to us, and therefore I'm sorry that I got a bit late. I think, frankly, my job here today is a little confined, limited to simply saying to you that we take, and as Mr. Parthasarathi has just said to you, we in the ministry take this extremely seriously as now an imperative dimension of the work that the Ministry of External Affairs has to do, of course, assisted by those ministries that have the direct domain experience on the energy field. It started, of course, in terms of traditional political outreach that we did, and that was backed largely with engaging countries with potential for developing relationship through the process of development partnership. It's now evolving, obviously, now in a significant way into economic partnership. I was in Bhutan yesterday, got back this afternoon from Bhutan, and I find that as we study and discussions that I had with our colleagues in Bhutan, the focus is significantly on development partnership and development processes that India can, as friends to Bhutan, continue to support in a significant way. And ultimately, of course, there are many self-interests involved. One might describe them as enlightened self-interests involved, but in due course, we would arrive at a win-win situation for Bhutan and for India, and that would happen when all the power projects are in place, assisted in a major way by India, but obviously creating a potential then for Bhutan, being a long landlocked economy, to have a constant source of income. But the constant source of income obviously will largely come from India, and as Nepal is being mentioned, once again, whether it's for harnessing of rivers for purposes other than production of power, or indeed for production of power, Nepal also would follow the same route. The problem today, whether it's in the neighborhood or it is further away, the problem today seems to be that we are still thinking in silos. We look at energy security as an important element in our programs and policies, and we look at the overall engagement on the international level somewhat separately. There is an overlap, there is an interlink, but not as significant and as intensely felt in our perceptions as indeed we should. And therefore, really, we should be concentrating a lot more on specifics that address the issue of security. Now, when we think of what is happening, for instance, in the Gulf region, what's described by other countries as the Middle East and by us as West Asia, we have there 6.5 million expatriates to look after. This is a very significant size population, but they're also a very important source of remittances into India, which obviously feeds into our foreign exchange reserves as well. And therefore, we have a responsibility towards them, a moral responsibility, because they are citizens of our country and have gone out to make a fortune for themselves and in the process fortune for the country itself. But we also have an important political commitment to them and a political obligation to them. But if you look at it in the long terms, there is in the backdrop also the issue of energy security. And we need to look at that constantly. And if we don't and we lose sight of that, then we could suddenly come up with a major gap in how we plan the growth of India at the stage level that we are talking of. Now the pipelines that are discussed from time to time, and in some pipelines we've come quite far, in some pipelines we are still at the conceptual stage. There are pipelines that have been discussed and then dropped for various reasons, pipelines that we can revive because of improving technology. And in this entire backdrop is how the world is inevitably going to change because of developments in the United States of America. And as you've just been told, over the next decade or decade and a half, United States of America becoming self-reliant or self-reliant plus reliant somewhat on Mexico and Canadian imports, but not having to worry about what has been broadly described as their concern, due to which their unusual interest in Arab Spring and the countries of that region has been seen in the past few years. Now, these are some fundamental issues, and the fundamental issues are, and that's the reason for which you will probably find queries about India, why India is not more actively engaged in many of these events that are happening around the globe. Why is India a bit hands-off? Why is India seen as a little cautious and careful? And why is India unwilling to take the robust positions that we see, for instance, France take in Mali, or the United States take and France and other countries take in Syria, and similarly, why we do not have the same level of engagement in our traditional friendly countries or friendly areas such as Palestine. And the answer simply is that we have a tradition of being open and willing to balance and participate with competing forces. And I think that hasn't gone away. That still remains intact. A lot of people question our commitment to the NAM movement as being only a cover for our commitment to one particular kind of international existence. But that was not it, I think, and that translates itself into what we see us do today, that we remain in a sense unique in being able to talk to two parties that confront each other or are in a conflict mode. And I am therefore extremely encouraged that we find the United States of America, Iran, other countries willing to understand that India has a dialogue, and India has a substantial relationship with Iran, when others are having a problem being able to enter into a discourse or a dialogue with Iran. But equally, United States of America as our strategic partners have a very wholesome relationship with us, and that hasn't come at the cost of a very sustained and remarkable relationship that we continue with Soviet Union in terms of Russian Federation, and what the Soviet Union has blossomed into or has spread into in form of the modern existence of Russian Federation and the republics that have emerged out of the Soviet Union. Similarly, we are able to talk to Iran. I was in France recently, and I found the president of France actually appreciating the fact that there is a country that with complete trust and sincerity communicate with Iran, despite the fact that we have voted against Iran on what was a very principled position as far as nuclear weapons were concerned, going back, of course, to Iran's own commitment, as we all know. But this hasn't ruptured our relationships, it hasn't caused barriers in our relationship, and therefore, for somebody to feel that we are, in a sense, holding back, in a sense, not doing what we could be doing, and not participating as actively and intensely as other countries are willing and prepared to participate, I think is unfair criticism of India, because we do believe we have a unique position. We also believe that unique position that we have in principle is a position that is also supported by practical and pragmatic considerations for evolving India's economic growth in the years to come, largely and greatly dependent for quite some time on supply of energy from sources that we must keep on the right side of India. Now, you've been given a picture of the possible sources available to us in our neighborhood, greater neighborhood, but also I think in a significant way India's role in the IORAC Indian Ocean region, India's role now in the ASEAN, and then on the verge of moving beyond ASEAN into Asia Pacific. And I think this is a very assiduously developed and very carefully crafted approach towards this vast area that for the 21st century is of special significance, based on the Look East policy that we enunciated some decade and a half ago, or about 2 decades ago, and that has evolved today into the position that we have with ASEAN, and very soon hopefully will have through ASEAN to Asia Pacific. When I began speaking to you, my intention was to give you an anecdote that explains what we are all doing here, and that's an anecdote from the famous character from Central Asia that plays a very major role today in our perceptions of energy security. And of course they are traditional friends of India, but there is this remarkable character from Central Asia called Mullah Nasruddin, who was once required to speak at a gathering of such an well-informed and expert-minded people as all of you here. And he thought that he didn't have very much to add to their knowledge, and so he got up and asked everyone if they knew what he was going to say. And they all paused and said, well, not really. So he smiled and said, then why should I speak to people who don't even know what I'm going to say, and walked away. So he was summoned back the following week, and once again asked to speak. And he got up and said, you know what I'm going to say? Everybody said, yes, we do. So he said, good, in that case I didn't say it at all, and he went. So everyone thought that this was extremely unfair, that he should be brought back and somehow forced to speak. So half of them said, we'll call him in and say we know, and the other half said, fine, and we will say we don't, so he will be forced to speak. So he was called, and he said, well, you know what I'm going to say, and half said, yes, of course we do. And the other half said, no, we don't. So he paused and said, good, in that case, those who know will please tell those who don't. My job is done. Now, when I arrived here, I actually thought, there wasn't very much really to say to you, because you would have already been telling each other everything that there is to tell. But I just wanted to say that this is important. We want to flag our thoughtful and serious approach towards energy security. I think we have a lot of work to do on it. It sort of partakes of the work that is already going on, but we need to push it further, and I think that many of our experts now are helping us do that. And I think this gathering here, Maruf, is in fact, I believe, a very beneficial step in that direction, and I would certainly be very happy to receive your record of your deliberations, and indeed if recommendations such as are made, and then move forward. But let me just tell you, one takeaway that I have this evening is Mr. G. Parthasarathy, who is often treated by his junior colleagues who have continued in service after he's superannuated and retired, and many other people, as a hawk on television. And so I said to him, this is interesting. You seem to be willing to make accommodation with unfriendly neighbors when it comes to energy. And he said, of course, on energy, yes, but on terrorism, no. Now, that's something on which I think we have a complete agreement. There is no problem, except the irony is that the very people that you feel need to be told a few things on the issue of terrorism are today in the United Nations holding a conclave on how to fight terrorism. Anyway, at least if we begin to combat and counter terrorism and unwholesome forces, even if we say it without conviction, it is at least beginning to be made somewhere. And I think it's important, as I stand here before you today, and we look at the larger picture and the futuristic picture of things that we need to do, the pipeline that has to pass through countries that today we play cricket with and hockey with, and displease our own citizens. They ask questions to why we are playing cricket with them. It will not be that easy for people every week to decide to switch off the pipeline, either for them or for us, because that would then become an essential item on which reliance will be somewhat pervasive, from the suppliers to those who would be receiving the gas. There wouldn't be an alternative, so there won't be a tap that you can switch off and a tap that you can switch on. And I believe that we will have to work out systems of international conduct and behavior that will have to be more reliable and more lasting than some of the arrangements that we have had in order simply to advocate peace. I think it seems that peace is not enough to persuade people, because the cost may be a long-term cost, and therefore it doesn't always appear as a cost to the present generation. But the cost of growth and development and economic reliance will obviously be so great and so immediate that hopefully all the attempts that we have made to find lasting peace in the region, which sort of have had sporadic success from time to time, and obviously great disappointments and great betrayals from time to time, would then finally be addressed for no other reason than because of a common cause, and the cause would be supply of energy. Fortunately, neither can any source be restricted to supply to one particular party, and nor can one particular party hold a veto over supply of energy from that source. If this arrangement can be put in place, I think that we would be living in a better world than we are today. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for gathering here to look at prospects, to look at challenges, look at pitfalls, as there would be, and to look at some innovative, imaginary, out-of-the-box thinking on how we can work towards energy security. I'm very pleased to be associated with what you're doing here. Thank you very much.